script society has pre-written for them, climbing the corporate ladder, seeking approval from peers, and measuring success by how loudly the world applauds. They compete for status like it's a limited resource, bending their identities to fit into molds they never questioned. But then there's him, a man who doesn't play the game, yet somehow ends up ahead without even looking like he tried. He refuses the leash. Whether it's braided from money, social clout, or desire, this man is the black swan of human behavior. You can't predict his moves, you can't fit him into a category. And the moment you think you understand him, he's already moved 3 steps ahead, operating in a place you didn't even know existed. The term black swan comes from Nassim Nicholas Taleb's work on rare and unpredictable events that have massive consequences, historically dismissed as impossible until they happen. In human terms, the Sigma male is that event. He's the deviation that makes the standard path look fragile and uninspired. You won't see him charging into the spotlight, you won't hear him demanding attention. But when he acts, the effects ripple outward, not with the chaos of noise, but with the precision of silence. Society thrives on systems, hierarchies, rituals, and rules telling people what to value and how to live. The Sigma male doesn't reject these systems out of rebellion. He simply operates outside them because he doesn't need them. He navigates the unmarked trails others are too hesitant to explore, existing in the space between societal lines. To most, he's invisible, but to those who notice, he's unforgettable. Understanding the Sigma male as the black swan isn't about glorifying an internet stereotype. It's about recognizing a mindset forged through discipline, observation, and complete self-ownership. In a culture built to keep people predictable through validation and fear, his independence isn't just unusual, it's disruptive. And disruption, when combined with quiet confidence, can be more powerful than any status, title, or crowd's approval. Number 1, self-reliance over dependency. He doesn't need a safety net of constant approval or a crowd to validate him because his identity is rooted in self-awareness rather than external applause. In psychology, this is often linked to a belief that one's life is shaped by personal choices and efforts rather than by fate or other people's opinions. While most people are conditioned from childhood to seek validation through grades, social likes, promotions, or the nod of approval from peers, he operates differently. His worth is defined by his own standards, not society's scoreboard, and that's not arrogance. It's emotional independence. This trait is rare in a world where dopamine hits from social media have rewired millions to equate worth with visibility. He measures success not by how many cheer for him, but by whether he is staying true to his principles. Imagine a rock climber scaling a cliff alone without a crowd at the bottom chanting his name. He still reaches the summit because the climb itself was the reward. Research on self-determination theory shows that individuals driven by intrinsic motivation, like personal growth, curiosity, and mastery, are more resilient and experience longer-lasting satisfaction than those chasing extrinsic rewards like money, fame, or approval. This mindset allows him to navigate setbacks without crumbling because his self-esteem isn't rented from others, it's owned outright. It's why he can walk away from toxic environments, decline offers that compromise his integrity, and avoid trends that don't align with his values. History is full of such figures, from Nikola Tesla, who ignored mainstream ridicule while pioneering technologies decades ahead of his time, to Leonardo da Vinci, whose relentless curiosity often led him to abandon popular commissions to pursue ideas the world wasn't ready for. These individuals understood that being anchored to your own compass is more valuable than being swept along by public opinion. In a way, his independence makes him unshakable because no applause means he's not distracted and no criticism means he's not derailed. It's not that he rejects all feedback, he's open to learning, but he filters it through his own principles before accepting it as truth. In a society obsessed with external validation, this inner-directed approach is both liberating and intimidating to others. It's why he stands out without trying, why he can work in silence yet still have the room notice when he walks in. He doesn't live to impress, he lives to express the truest version of himself. Number 2, strategic detachment. He's not cold, he's calculated. In a world where most people scatter their attention like confetti, he's the man who moves with precision. Like a sniper choosing a single bullet, he selects where to invest his time, energy, and emotions with surgical accuracy. This isn't about being heartless, it's about understanding the finite nature of personal resources. Psychology refers to this as emotional bandwidth, the limited capacity we have for processing and engaging with the people and situations around us. Just as a sniper studies wind direction, distance and timing before pulling the trigger, he evaluates the potential outcomes of every interaction before committing himself. This calculated approach is backed by science. Studies on decision-making reveal that those who take longer to assess situations often make more accurate and rewarding choices than those who act impulsively. His detachment isn't apathy, it's strategy. He understands that constantly saying yes leads to burnout, scattered priorities, and diminished effectiveness. Instead, he says no to 90% of what crosses his path so that the 10% he commits to receives his full power and focus. This is the same principle elite athletes use when training. They don't try to master every sport at once, they pick their battles and go all in. People often mistake this intentional selectiveness for arrogance or aloofness, but in truth it's a form of self-respect. By protecting his energy, he ensures he has the mental clarity and emotional stability to show up fully where it matters most. In business, this is akin to focusing on high ROI investments, pouring resources only into what yields the greatest return. In relationships, it means surrounding himself with people who uplift and challenge him rather than drain him. In life, it's about choosing purpose over impulse, meaning over noise. That's why when he engages, people notice. His words carry more weight, his actions hit harder, and his presence feels more valuable because it's rare. Like a master chess player, he's always thinking 3 moves ahead, not because he fears the game, but because he respects it. And in a culture obsessed with constant motion, his ability to pause, aim, and fire only when necessary is not just a skill, it's his quiet superpower. Number 3, purpose over popularity. While others drift toward what's trending, the Sigma's compass is fixed on what matters to him, a direction that rarely shifts with the winds of public opinion. Trends by nature have a short shelf life. They spike in popularity, dominate conversations, and then fade into obscurity, often within months or even days. But the Sigma operates on a different wavelength. His focus is on building things that will outlast the hype cycle, projects, skills, and ambitions crafted with the patience of an artisan and the vision of a strategist. This mindset is rooted in an understanding of how value works over time. Sociologists note that while most people are influenced by what's known as social proof, the psychological tendency to copy what others are doing, Sigmas tend to be internally motivated, setting goals based on their own logic, passion, and principles, rather than external validation. This is why a Sigma might spend years quietly mastering a skill that no one pays attention to now, knowing it will pay off when the rest of the world catches up. History is filled with figures who operated this way. Nikola Tesla, who pursued innovations decades ahead of his time, or J.R.R. Tolkien, who spent more than a decade crafting The Lord of the Rings without chasing literary trends. Psychologists might call this low conformity and high conscientiousness, but for the Sigma, it's simply how he's wired. He's not allergic to recognition, he just doesn't measure his worth by it. While others pivot every time the crowd changes direction, the Sigma keeps walking his own path, trusting that the seeds he plants today will bear fruit tomorrow. This approach is not only more stable, but also often more profitable in the long run. A skill built over a decade will outlast the popularity of a social media dance challenge. A business rooted in solving real problems will endure long after the latest viral product fizzles out. The Sigma understands that applause is fleeting, but mastery is permanent. So while the world chases trends like waves on the surface of the ocean, the Sigma moves like the deep current beneath, steady, powerful, and destined to reshape the shoreline in his own time. Number 4, silent power in social settings. He can walk into a room and dominate it without saying a single word, not because he's trying to, but because his presence speaks louder than noise ever could. This isn't some mystical aura that only a chosen few are born with. It's a deliberate blend of calm body language, sharp observation, and the rare ability to stay grounded in a world addicted to performance. Psychologists have long noted that confidence is often communicated non-verbally. And studies on body language show that open posture, steady eye contact, and controlled movements signal dominance and self-assurance. But what sets him apart is the lack of desperation behind it. He's not performing for approval, he's simply existing in his own space with ease. This refusal to compete for attention works like reverse psychology on the human mind. In social dynamics, the scarcity principle suggests that people value what is rare, and in a room full of voices fighting to be heard, the man who doesn't push becomes the most intriguing. His deep observation plays an equally crucial role. By taking a moment to scan the environment, notice who's aligned with whom, and pick up on micro-expressions, he positions himself with a strategist's awareness. Research on social perception shows that people who observe before engaging often make a stronger impact when they finally speak because their contributions feel intentional and precise. Meanwhile, his calm energy creates what behavioral scientists call emotional contagion. Others unconsciously mirror his relaxed state, making him the silent anchor of the room. This mix of presence, patience, and self-control is why he doesn't need to outshine anyone. People naturally turn toward him. It's the same principle that makes a still lion more commanding than a barking dog, the quiet power of knowing you could roar but choosing not to. And while many chase the spotlight, he understands a deeper truth. In high-value social situations, influence isn't about being the loudest. It's about being the one who makes others feel they've just encountered someone worth remembering. This is why when he finally speaks, the room listens. Not because they have to, but because they want to. His silence isn't emptiness. It's a canvas on which everyone else's curiosity paints the picture. Number 5, respect without submission. A true Sigma male approaches respect not as a bargaining chip, but as a baseline principle. He treats people well because it aligns with his values, not because he's angling for favors or trying to secure a higher rung on the social ladder. This sets him apart in a world where too often respect is conditional, granted to those above in rank and withheld from those perceived as beneath. Sociologists have long observed that in hierarchical systems, individuals often adjust their behavior depending on the power dynamic, a phenomenon known as status accommodation. Alphas may expect deference and betas may expect guidance or dominance. But the Sigma male sidesteps both traps entirely. His respect is steady, grounded in his own moral compass rather than the shifting winds of social position. This independence makes him immune to power games. He neither grovels to authority nor condescends to those with less influence. In fact, his ability to stand before an alpha without bowing and to engage with a beta without patronizing unsettles people who rely on predictable patterns of dominance and submission. It's a kind of social aikido. By refusing to play the game, he removes the opponent's ability to win or lose against him. Psychologists might describe this as autonomous self-regulation, where one's actions are guided internally rather than manipulated externally. This approach also gives the Sigma a unique advantage. He can form authentic connections across all levels of a hierarchy because his behavior doesn't shift with status. People sense that he is genuine, which fosters trust, even if they can't quite figure out his angle, mainly because he doesn't have one. In workplaces, this might mean he speaks to the CEO with the same tone and candor as he does to the janitor, a move that often earns both admiration and confusion. In friendships, it manifests as consistent loyalty without hidden agendas. The Sigma's quiet refusal to be swayed by titles or positions not only keeps him grounded, but also shields him from the toxic politics that can drain others. In a culture obsessed with climbing ladders, his calm detachment is almost rebellious. He's not against progress, but he refuses to sacrifice his authenticity for the illusion of power. And that, ironically, gives him more influence than those frantically competing for it. Number 6, walking away as a weapon. When a Sigma male senses that a situation has turned toxic, manipulative, or unproductive, he doesn't waste his energy in endless arguments or emotional tug-of-wars. He simply leaves. This quiet exit isn't a sign of weakness or avoidance. In fact, it's the opposite. Psychologically, it's one of the most powerful responses a person can make. By refusing to engage in drama, he demonstrates what behavioral experts call self-preservation through boundary enforcement. His absence sends a message that resonates far deeper than any verbal counterattack. He is immune to control. Studies in social psychology have shown that withdrawal from a conflict, when done intentionally, can disrupt the manipulator's power because it denies them the fuel they need, your attention and emotional reaction. In a way, it's like oxygen being cut off from a fire. Without it, the flames die out. Sigma males understand that engaging with someone who thrives on chaos only entrenches you deeper into their game. Instead, they operate on the principle of cost-benefit analysis. If a situation costs more in peace, energy, and dignity than it gives in resolution, they walk away. And they do so without theatrics, no slamming doors, no social media outbursts, just a silent, calculated departure. Ironically, this non-reaction often hits harder than any argument could. It unsettles those who expected a fight, because silence denies closure, denies validation, and denies them the satisfaction of knowing they got under your skin. In evolutionary psychology terms, it's a display of autonomy and resource control, the signal that his time, attention, and emotional investment are too valuable to be wasted. That's why his absence feels so heavy. It's not just physical, it's symbolic. It tells people that his identity, stability, and self-worth aren't anchored to anyone else's approval or control. The Sigma male's exit is not an act of running away. It's a statement that he chooses his battles wisely. And some wars simply aren't worth fighting. And while others may spend hours or days trying to prove their point in heated exchanges, he proves his in seconds by walking away. It's not about winning the argument. It's about winning his own peace. That's a victory no manipulator can ever take from him. Number 7. Skill mastery as armor. He invests deeply in his craft, knowing that skill is the purest form of independence. True mastery is a currency that never devalues, a shield against the whims of the world. History shows us that the people who shape civilizations, be they inventors, artists, or thinkers, were not those who waited for approval, but those who poured themselves relentlessly into their work until it spoke louder than any introduction could. Think of Leonardo da Vinci, who dissected cadavers to understand anatomy not because he had to, but because his curiosity demanded it. Or Nikola Tesla, who would spend nights in his lab consumed by the vision of a world lit by wireless energy. When you're exceptional at something, you don't need permission to create impact. Your skill becomes the passport that allows you to move freely, unhindered by gatekeepers. In today's world, where algorithms dictate visibility and trends can be manufactured overnight, genuine expertise cuts through the noise. It commands respect even from those who may not like you, because ability is difficult to fake for long. The process of becoming exceptional isn't glamorous. It's built on countless hours of practice, the willingness to fail repeatedly, and the discipline to refine even when no one is watching. But this investment compounds. The more you build your craft, the less dependent you become on validation, resources, or approval from others. A skilled person can step into a room and shift its energy simply by demonstrating competence. People instinctively trust those who have clearly done the work. In a way, mastery is the ultimate form of quiet rebellion. It frees you from having to beg for opportunities because you have the power to create them. The world eventually notices those who consistently deliver excellence, and when it does, the leverage shifts in your favor. This is why the Sigma-type individual doesn't chase the spotlight. He builds something so solid that the spotlight has no choice but to find him. Skill is not just a tool for success. It is the foundation of autonomy, influence, and legacy. Once you have it, no one can take it away without your consent. Number 8, legacy over ego. His ultimate goal isn't to be liked, it's to leave something behind that can't be erased. For a man like this, legacy matters more than popularity. It could take the form of a business that outlives him, a philosophy that reshapes how others think, a body of work that inspires generations, or a societal shift sparked by his actions. History shows us that the most transformative figures, think Nikola Tesla, Marcus Aurelius, or Steve Jobs, often weren't chasing applause. They were driven by an unshakable vision. He understands that empires rise and crumble, and trends fade like yesterday's headlines, but true impact leaves an imprint in the collective memory. This is where the black swan effect comes in, a rare, unexpected event that changes everything, often in ways no one predicted. He may not be the loudest voice in the room, but his actions quietly alter the terrain for everyone else. Decades later, people might not remember his name, but they'll live in the world he helped shape. For him, the aim isn't to be visible today, it's to be undeniable tomorrow, ensuring that his trail remains carved into the landscape of time long after he's gone. A Sigma male can't be controlled because control thrives on predictability, and the Sigma refuses to be predictable. He doesn't just think outside the box, he walks past it without even glancing inside. Like the black swan theory in probability, his actions are rare, disruptive, and impossible to forecast, making any attempt to manipulate him futile. While most follow social scripts written by others, he writes his own and never surrenders the pen. This autonomy is his armor. It keeps him unseen when he chooses, unfazed by trends, and unforgettable to those who try and fail to fit him into a mold. He doesn't sit on a throne, he doesn't need one. While others fight for crowns, approval, and recognition, he simply walks past the battlefield, silent, unbothered, untouchable. This is the Sigma male, not the loud conqueror, not the obedient follower. He is the man who rewrites the rules by refusing to play the game. Society has always functioned on hierarchy, what sociologists call social stratification. From classrooms where kids compete for popularity, to boardrooms where executives scramble for promotions, to politics where power is flaunted like currency, there is always a ladder. The alpha climbs it, the beta supports it, and most men struggle just to hold a rung. But the Sigma, he doesn't even place his hands on the ladder. He steps aside, finds his own path, and often ends up higher without ever entering the competition. This unusual stance creates a powerful psychological effect. In a crowded room, people instinctively notice the one who isn't trying to be noticed. Psychologists call this the paradox of detachment. When someone doesn't chase validation, they often attract more of it. The Sigma's presence is felt not because he demands attention, but because he doesn't need it. His strength doesn't manifest in shouting matches, in flexing his status, or in playing dominance games. Instead, it shows in his emotional control, his comfort in solitude, and his quiet mastery of self. That is rare in a society where noise is mistaken for power. But why does the world react so strongly to a man who doesn't ask for its attention? Because he represents something radical: freedom. The freedom to walk alone without fear. The freedom to live by principle instead of approval. The freedom to lead without followers and succeed without applause. This disrupts the system because it proves you don't need hierarchy to win, and that makes him unpredictable, untamable, and in many ways, unstoppable. The Sigma is the king who needs no throne. His power is not granted by others, it is born from within. And today, we step into that psychology, not fantasy, not exaggeration, but the unfiltered truth of why a man outside the system can still rise above it. Let's begin. Point 1. He sees the system but doesn't serve it. The Sigma understands society's hierarchies in a way most people don't. He sees the invisible webs that keep people striving for approval, whether it's the corporate ladder, school popularity charts, or even subtle games of social dominance. These structures, while appearing natural, are carefully designed to control behavior. Take the corporate ladder, for example. An employee is told to work hard, wait for promotions, and climb the ranks, but statistically, only a small fraction ever make it to the top. Social hierarchies function the same way. History shows that humans, like other primates, naturally create dominant systems where status determines resources and influence. But while most people spend their energy trying to rise within these structures, the Sigma male recognizes the game for what it is, a loop meant to keep people busy, competitive, and dependent on validation from others. Instead of wasting his time fighting for position, he chooses to step outside of the system entirely. This doesn't mean he rejects society altogether, but he refuses to let it define his value. For instance, instead of chasing the corner office, he might pursue financial independence through entrepreneurship, freelance work, or minimalism, granting him freedom without being tethered to traditional success markers. Socially, he avoids cliques and politics, preferring genuine connections over approval-seeking friendships. Psychologists often note that people who operate outside of dominance hierarchies experience less stress and more autonomy, which aligns with the Sigma's preference for independence. He knows the system may work for some, it provides stability, identity, and a sense of order, but it will never own him. His mindset echoes the principles of thinkers like Henry David Thoreau, who walked away from societal pressures to live authentically, or even modern digital nomads who redefine success outside conventional structures. This is what makes the Sigma both misunderstood and respected. He's not rebelling for the sake of rebellion, nor is he bitter about being excluded. Instead, he calmly rejects the idea that his worth is tied to a rank, a title, or a position in someone else's hierarchy. In a world obsessed with competition, the Sigma plays no game at all, and that is precisely what gives him an unshakable kind of freedom. Point 2, silence makes him dangerous. In a noisy world, silence is power, and few embody this truth better than the Sigma male. While most people scramble to prove themselves through constant chatter, displays of wealth, or desperate bids for recognition, the Sigma takes a radically different path. He withdraws from the noise. This is not weakness or indifference, but strategy. Psychology studies have shown that people who speak less are often perceived as more competent and confident, a phenomenon known as the silent authority effect. When someone doesn't feel the need to constantly explain or broadcast themselves, others instinctively assume they have nothing to prove, which paradoxically makes them appear stronger. This is why the Sigma's refusal to compete for attention creates a magnetic presence. In fact, it mirrors the way nature works. The quietest forces are often the most powerful. Think of gravity. It makes no sound, yet it governs the movement of planets. The Sigma operates in much the same way, influencing people not with noise, but with an unshakable calm that others can't help but notice. Part of what makes him so fascinating is unpredictability. In social psychology, predictability is tied to control. When you can forecast someone's moves, you can manipulate them. But the Sigma's silence leaves people guessing. They don't know what he's thinking, planning, or feeling, and that mystery becomes intimidating. It's the same principle that makes poker players dangerous when they keep a poker face. Their silence forces others to play in uncertainty. The Sigma doesn't reveal his entire hand. And in a society obsessed with oversharing, that restraint is rare and powerful. Even in leadership research, those who master the art of listening more than speaking are often rated as more effective because their words carry weight when they finally choose to speak. This explains why the world both respects and fears him. Respect comes because silence suggests discipline, independence, and strength. Fear comes because people can't control what they can't predict. When everyone else is performing on the social stage, the Sigma chooses to step off and walk his own path, and that very act of detachment makes him unforgettable. His silence is not emptiness but presence, not absence but mastery. And in an age where attention is the new currency, the one who refuses to spend it recklessly ends up holding the greatest wealth of all: mystery, influence, and freedom. Point 3, he values solitude over approval. Most men fear being alone, but solitude is where the Sigma thrives. Unlike the majority who equate isolation with loneliness, the Sigma male understands that solitude is not an absence of connection, but rather a presence of self. In silence, he sharpens his mind, strengthens his discipline, and listens to the voice the world drowns out, his own. History is filled with examples of great thinkers, inventors, and leaders who withdrew from the noise of society to hear the whispers of their deepest insights. Nikola Tesla, for instance, often worked alone, refusing to let constant social distraction pull him away from his inventions. Similarly, philosophers like Friedrich Nietzsche and writers like Henry David Thoreau use solitude as a crucible for their most groundbreaking ideas. Modern psychology even supports this. Studies from the University of Virginia found that people generally prefer small distractions over being alone with their thoughts, highlighting how rare the Sigma's comfort with solitude truly is. This comfort gives him an edge because in that quiet space his mind becomes sharper, less clouded by groupthink and more attuned to his own convictions. Solitude is his fortress, not a prison. It's where he builds resilience, develops clarity of purpose, and fortifies his independence. While others may crumble without constant validation, the Sigma male thrives because he has mastered the art of being his own company. This doesn't mean he is antisocial or incapable of forming deep connections, quite the opposite. Because he spends time alone refining his thoughts and values, the relationships he does engage in are more meaningful, rooted in authenticity rather than necessity. He doesn't chase approval, and that makes his presence magnetic to others who sense the quiet confidence of someone who doesn't need the crowd to feel complete. In an age of constant notifications, endless scrolling, and performative social media, the Sigma's ability to step away and thrive in silence is not only rare but revolutionary. Solitude is not a weakness he hides from. It is the very training ground that makes him strong, focused, and untouchable. Where others fear the quiet, he finds power. Where others get lost in the noise, he finds himself. Point 4. His logic is cold but precise. While others let emotions dictate their moves, the Sigma calculates. He doesn't react, he responds. He chooses based on principle, not impulse. This makes his decisions slower but sharper, his actions fewer but heavier. This way of operating is not just a personality quirk, it is a psychological strategy rooted in emotional intelligence and Stoic philosophy. Emotional reactivity, as psychologists note, often leads to impulsive choices that satisfy short-term feelings but compromise long-term outcomes. Studies in neuroscience have shown that when people act purely on emotion, the amygdala, the brain's emotional center, takes control, often overriding rational thought. The Sigma, however, is skilled at engaging the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for logic, planning, and decision-making. This means he doesn't allow temporary anger, excitement, or fear to dictate his path. Instead, he pauses, analyzes, and waits for the fog of feeling to clear before moving forward. It's the difference between a chess master and a casual player. While the latter lunges at the nearest opportunity, the master calculates several moves ahead, sacrificing speed for strategy. History is filled with figures who embodied this mindset. Leaders like Marcus Aurelius, the Stoic emperor, emphasized responding to life with principle rather than being tossed around by fleeting emotions. Modern psychology calls this delayed gratification, a powerful trait linked to greater success and resilience. The Sigma male naturally embodies this. His restraint makes him unpredictable because he doesn't fall into the traps others set through emotional provocation. While many waste energy reacting, he conserves his, striking with precision only when it matters. This is why his actions carry such weight. They are not diluted by constant movement, but magnified by scarcity and intention. In a noisy world that rewards immediate reactions, the Sigma's patience stands out. He shows that true strength is not in being the loudest or fastest, but in being the most deliberate. His slower pace is not weakness, but wisdom, a refusal to let the momentary control the eternal. By responding instead of reacting, he lives as a proof that measured restraint is often the sharpest weapon of all. Point 5. Respect is earned, not demanded. The Sigma doesn't chase respect, yet it follows him everywhere he goes, almost like a shadow. What makes this phenomenon fascinating is that it isn't rooted in force, loudness, or dominance, but rather in the quiet strength of self-possession. His detachment from validation gives him an aura that forces others to acknowledge him, even rivals and manipulators who normally thrive on exploiting insecurity. The reason for this lies in basic psychology. People are naturally drawn to those who appear unaffected by social approval. Research in social dynamics suggests that detachment from external validation creates what's called perceived independence, a trait that elevates one's social value because it signals confidence, security, and self-sufficiency. Unlike the alpha, who asserts his dominance by demanding loyalty and often thrives on outward recognition, the Sigma inspires loyalty simply by embodying a way of being that others quietly admire. His independence unsettles manipulators because they have no leverage. He cannot be bribed by flattery or controlled by disapproval. This places him in a category of influence that is rare and often misunderstood. While many chase status, the Sigma's refusal to participate in the game makes him paradoxically more respected. History offers countless examples of figures who mirrored this dynamic. Thinkers like Marcus Aurelius, who wielded immense power yet practiced Stoic detachment, or innovators like Nikola Tesla, who cared little for public opinion but ended up revolutionizing the world. Even in modern times, people who operate outside traditional hierarchies, whether in business, art, or leadership, often earn respect not because they seek it, but because their authenticity commands it. This is the essence of the Sigma's paradox. By not demanding attention, he receives it. By not ordering loyalty, he inspires it. It's an unspoken contract written in the language of authenticity, one that others instinctively recognize. To stand detached in a society obsessed with validation requires uncommon discipline and self-awareness. That quiet resistance to the pull of approval is what makes the Sigma magnetic. His presence alone disrupts the rules of the social hierarchy, showing that respect is not something you grab by force. It is something that arrives naturally when you no longer need it. Point 6. Women are drawn, yet confused. In relationships, the Sigma male carries a kind of unpredictability that is nothing short of magnetic. Unlike the traditional archetypes, the alpha who pursues with dominance or the beta who seeks validation, the Sigma is carved from a different stone. He doesn't chase, he doesn't cling, and he isn't easily swayed by superficial gestures. This detachment isn't rooted in arrogance, but in self-sufficiency. Psychology research shows that unpredictability in social interactions often heightens attraction because it keeps the brain engaged. When someone cannot be fully predicted, they become harder to dismiss. For women, this quality can be deeply intriguing. Some are drawn to his mystery, seeing him as a puzzle worth solving. Others find it intimidating because his silence speaks louder than flattery, and his restraint is a reminder that he cannot be manipulated through common games of attention. What sets him apart is his approach to intimacy. He sees it as a deliberate choice rather than a conquest. Where many men might rush to impress or prove themselves, the Sigma remains grounded, viewing connection as something sacred that must flow naturally. This doesn't mean he avoids closeness, but rather that he refuses to dilute it with desperation. In fact, studies in relationship psychology reveal that individuals who maintain autonomy and emotional independence are often perceived as more desirable partners because they bring stability rather than neediness. The Sigma embodies this principle. He is with someone not out of fear of loneliness, but because he truly values their presence. This creates an aura of authenticity. And authenticity, as countless surveys on attraction have shown, is among the most sought-after qualities in a partner. His unpredictability, then, is not about playing games, but about living from a place of inner alignment, where love is freely given and never forced. Women who cross his path quickly realize that he cannot be lured by shallow tactics, and that realization alone sets him apart from nearly every other man. Whether admired or feared, his presence leaves an impression that lingers, proof that in a world of constant noise and pursuit, the rarest thing of all is the one who does not need to chase, yet still manages to capture attention effortlessly. Point 7, he masters skills, not status. While others compete for titles, recognition and status, the Sigma male plays a completely different game, one that exists outside the spotlight. He does not measure himself against society's standards, nor does he crave validation through awards, ranks, or social applause. Instead, he competes with the only rival that matters, himself. Every day he sets silent challenges, collecting skills, sharpening his craft, and expanding his knowledge like a warrior forging hidden weapons. This pursuit of mastery isn't for show, it's for survival, growth, and fulfillment. Historically, the greatest innovators and thinkers often embodied this mindset. Nikola Tesla, for instance, was less concerned about fame and fortune than he was about unlocking the secrets of electricity and energy. His rival, Thomas Edison, sought patents and business dominance, but Tesla was obsessed with innovation itself, proof of the Sigma's way of valuing knowledge over recognition. In psychology, this aligns with what is called intrinsic motivation, the drive to learn and improve because of internal satisfaction, not external rewards. Studies have shown that people who focus on intrinsic goals develop deeper expertise, greater resilience, and higher creativity compared to those who chase external approval. That's the Sigma's invisible power. He builds from within, creating a foundation that cannot be shaken by opinions or trends. While others may shine brightly for a moment in the public eye, the Sigma's quiet accumulation of skill ensures he outlasts them in the long run. He doesn't need applause because he knows that applause fades, but competence endures. This is why people often underestimate him, because his strength is not loud, not flashy, and not displayed on a pedestal. Yet when the moment comes, when a challenge arises, he reveals what he has been building in silence, and it often leaves others stunned. His true value is rooted in what he can do when no one is watching, a reminder that mastery is invisible until tested. In a world obsessed with comparison, the Sigma embodies the timeless truth that the greatest victories are won not by conquering others, but by conquering oneself. And that is why his power is both quiet and unshakable, invisible to the crowd, but undeniable to those who witness it. Point 8. His legacy is silent, yet immovable. The Sigma male's influence is a quiet, almost imperceptible force, yet its effects ripple far beyond his immediate presence. Unlike those who chase accolades, status symbols, or public recognition, he measures success by the integrity of his actions and the authenticity of his life. History is filled with examples of individuals whose subtle contributions shaped entire movements without fanfare, from Nikola Tesla, whose innovations transformed modern electricity yet often went uncelebrated, to Emily Dickinson, whose profound poetry quietly altered literary expression. The Sigma male operates on a similar principle. His impact is not shouted from rooftops, but observed by those attentive enough to recognize it. He prioritizes depth over spectacle, substance over pretense, and mastery over approval. This approach fosters resilience, as he's not tethered to the fluctuating opinions of others, and encourages a level of self-awareness rare in the modern world. His throne is not a chair of gold or a seat of authority. It is the inner freedom that comes from living true to oneself, unshaken by external pressures. In essence, the Sigma's legacy is a blueprint of authentic living, a silent architecture of influence that endures long after the applause fades. He doesn't sit on a throne because he doesn't need one. Unlike traditional leaders who equate power with titles, followers, or public recognition, the Sigma male finds strength in self-mastery and inner freedom. His authority comes from discipline, confidence, and the ability to walk away from what does not serve him. Psychologists note that men who prioritize autonomy over dominance often exhibit higher emotional intelligence and resilience, navigating life on their own terms. The Sigma male is proof that true influence doesn't require control over others. It's earned quietly through actions, presence, and unwavering self-assurance. Stay curious, be unseen, be unfazed, be unforgettable. He remembers, not out of bitterness, but because precision demands it. The Sigma male operates with a rare level of clarity, one that doesn't rush to forget just because society tells him that's what healing looks like. Unlike the masses who forgive to feel better or to appease social norms, the Sigma understands that not every wound needs to be mended. In fact, some of them are meant to leave marks. These are not emotional trophies, but tactical reminders. You see, forgiveness has long been sold as a noble act, a moral high ground. But for the Sigma, forgiveness isn't always wise. It can be dangerous. In a world where apologies are handed out like coupons and second chances are manipulated for gain, forgiveness can become an open door for repeated offense. That's not healing, that's exposure. So the Sigma opts for something different. Discernment. He doesn't react with rage, nor does he spend his energy plotting revenge. He simply withdraws, with intent, with standards. His silence isn't weakness, it's a reinforced boundary. Neuroscience backs this up. The brain encodes painful memories more vividly than neutral ones precisely because it's trying to protect you from future harm. The Sigma uses this biological truth as psychological armor. His memory isn't emotional baggage, it's a data log. When he chooses not to forgive, it's not because he can't, it's because he won't let a past betrayal be smoothed over with artificial niceties. Closure to him is not a conversation. It's a decision made internally and enforced quietly. He doesn't need the last word, a dramatic confrontation, or even an apology. His exit is the message. This mindset doesn't make him cold, it makes him calculated. Selective remembrance is how he evolves, how he protects his peace and sustains his power. Because for the Sigma male, memory isn't a burden, it's strategy. And in his world, the quietest man in the room often has the sharpest mind. Number 1. Because forgiveness often breeds repetition. The Sigma observes cycles, patterns and loops that most people are blind to until the damage is already done. He watches people not just for who they are, but for what they repeat. In a world where most are emotionally impulsive, the Sigma male is strategically reflective. Forgiving someone too quickly in his mind isn't just an act of grace, it's an unguarded opening, a soft target. It's not that he's cold or cruel, rather he understands a crucial psychological truth. Humans are habitual creatures. Behavior that's rewarded, like being forgiven without consequence, is likely to be repeated. He knows this. That's why the Sigma sees pain not as something merely to be endured, but as raw, unfiltered information. Pain carries data. It reveals truth about others and about himself. It sharpens the mind and strengthens discernment. If someone stabs you once, it's betrayal. But if they stab you again after you've let them back in, it's no longer just their fault. It becomes your responsibility. In this sense, the Sigma doesn't forgive quickly, not out of bitterness, but out of wisdom. He doesn't dwell in hate. In fact, hate is inefficient. It consumes energy and clouds judgment, but he does remember because remembrance is a weapon. Neuroscience backs this up. Emotional memories are deeply encoded in the brain to serve as survival mechanisms. When you burn your hand on a stove, you don't touch it again. The Sigma applies this same biological law to human behavior. He doesn't romanticize forgiveness as many do. He sees that while forgiveness can bring inner peace, it can also dull one's survival instinct if applied without discretion. The Sigma thrives because he doesn't ignore his instincts, he hones them. Instincts aren't just animal reflexes. They're the subconscious culmination of all your experiences, observations, and lessons. And in a world full of manipulation, false apologies, and repeat offenders, the Sigma's ability to remember, to recognize the cycle, and to act accordingly is not a flaw, it's his edge. Forgiveness has its place, but so does self-preservation. For the Sigma, it's not about revenge or resentment. It's about not being anyone's fool twice. Number 2, because closure is a myth. Most people chase forgiveness like it's a treasure map to emotional closure. They believe that hearing "I'm sorry" or having that final heart-to-heart will finally bring them peace. But the Sigma male operates on an entirely different wavelength. He doesn't wait for apologies to sleep soundly, nor does he crave conversations to untangle the past. In fact, studies in emotional intelligence suggest that individuals with a high internal locus of control, like Sigma males, tend to rely on self-direction rather than external validation. For the Sigma, closure isn't something to be begged for, it's something to be created. He doesn't romanticize goodbyes or waste time decoding what went wrong in someone else's mind. Once he extracts the lesson, the emotional data, and the psychological insight, he files it away like a mission completed. The door is closed, not slammed, not locked, just respectfully shut. He knows that trying to get closure from others often reopens wounds rather than heals them. While others sit in emotional limbo waiting for peace talks, the Sigma already has his boots on, walking into his next chapter. Closure, in his eyes, is a luxury designed for those who fear solitude, who need shared understanding to move on. But the Sigma has mastered solitude. It's where he thrives, where he reflects, evolves, and sharpens his edge. There's no ceremony in his departure, no drawn-out goodbyes. His silence, the message. Psychologically speaking, this self-contained mindset is often associated with higher resilience and a deeper sense of identity. While society often encourages reconciliation and emotional processing with others, the Sigma processes inwardly, efficiently, and permanently. It's not coldness, but clarity. He doesn't carry grudges, he carries wisdom. Forgiveness for him is not an event, it's a quiet decision made in solitude, often without the other party ever knowing. He moves on, not because he's unaffected, but because he knows the true power lies in letting go without needing anything in return. That is the Sigma's closure. Clean, wordless, complete. Number 3, because forgiveness wastes energy, emotional processing, second-guessing, revisiting old wounds. These aren't just passing thoughts for the Sigma male, they're mental tolls with a measurable cost. You see, the Sigma operates like a strategist. Everything he does, every move he makes is filtered through a sharp internal calculus. Forgiveness for most people is seen as a noble act, an emotional release that leads to peace. But for the Sigma, it's not that simple. He understands that forgiving someone who has wronged him often requires reopening a wound, revisiting betrayal, and mentally rehearsing a narrative that drained him once before. It demands emotional labor, mental bandwidth that in his world is finite and sacred. According to neuroscience research, emotional processing consumes significant cognitive resources, particularly within the prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for decision-making, emotional regulation, and planning. The Sigma doesn't ignore this. Instead, he reallocates. He views forgiveness not through the lens of moral obligation, but through the pragmatic lens of energetic investment. That energy, he reasons, could be better spent elsewhere, building, creating, evolving. He's not interested in looping emotional narratives. He's interested in forward momentum. This doesn't mean he's cruel or bitter. Quite the opposite. Cutting ties isn't an act of vengeance, it's an act of clarity. He walks away not because he holds a grudge, but because he understands the price of re-engaging. In the language of strategy, it's called opportunity cost, the loss of potential gain from other alternatives when one option is chosen. And when that option is emotional entanglement, he sees it as a liability. Studies in psychology have also shown that rumination, the act of mentally replaying negative events, can lead to increased stress, anxiety, and even depression. The Sigma knows this instinctively. He doesn't dwell, he detaches, he moves on. In a world that romanticizes emotional reconciliation, the Sigma carves out a different path, not one of coldness, but of self-preservation and high-level focus. He's not heartless, he's selective. And in choosing not to forgive, he's not being vindictive. He's simply choosing to invest his inner world in places where the return is growth, not grief. Number 4, because he's not trying to be understood. Forgiveness is often praised as a noble act, something associated with emotional maturity, spiritual growth, and being the so-called bigger person. In modern culture, it's seen as a sign of inner peace, a clean heart, or moral superiority. But for the Sigma male, forgiveness doesn't follow this well-beaten path. To him, it isn't a public performance or a chance to gain approval. He doesn't parade his emotional wounds on display just to receive applause for his healing process. He's not interested in looking wise, composed, or enlightened in front of others. The Sigma's world is internal, private, and governed by a strong code of self-respect. He draws boundaries not as a power play, but as a non-negotiable requirement for peace. And when someone crosses those lines, he doesn't scream, beg, or retaliate. He simply withdraws. Unlike others who may forgive for closure or to appear evolved, the Sigma male doesn't feel pressured to explain why he keeps his distance. According to studies in psychology, boundary enforcement is a core trait of emotionally autonomous individuals. And Sigma males often exhibit a heightened sense of self-differentiation, meaning they know where they end and others begin. So when he's hurt, he doesn't necessarily hold a grudge, but neither does he allow repeated access to his inner world. He may walk away without fireworks or speeches, and people often misread this as coldness. But it's not bitterness, it's precision. It's protecting what's sacred without seeking understanding or validation. Forgiveness, in his case, is not about letting someone off the hook. It's about choosing silence over conflict and peace over performance. The Sigma male would rather be misjudged and untouchable than understood and emotionally exposed. Because to him, invulnerability is not a weakness to overcome. It's a fortress of wisdom built from experience. And so while the world debates what it means to forgive and forget, the Sigma quietly remembers. Not to stay angry, but to stay sharp. In the end, his refusal to play by emotional social norms isn't an act of rebellion, it's a declaration of independence. He knows that not every wound needs to be healed with reconciliation. Sometimes the greatest strength lies in walking away and never looking back. Number 5. Because some lines can't be uncrossed. There are betrayals that don't heal, wounds not of the body but of the soul. Words once spoken, laced with deceit or cruelty, don't simply disappear into the ether. They echo in the mind, staining memories and rewriting the way a man sees the world. For the Sigma male, who already lives with calculated distance from the chaos of mainstream society, betrayal strikes differently. It doesn't just hurt, it recalibrates. Unlike others who may rush to forgive and forget, the Sigma male does not force himself into artificial amnesia. He doesn't pretend to erase what changed him. He accepts the fracture, studies it, learns from it, and rebuilds his life with that crack fully visible in the architecture of his soul. It becomes part of his emotional blueprint, not as a weakness, but as a warning. Psychologically, betrayal trauma can create long-term trust issues, according to studies in clinical psychology. When trust is broken, especially by those closest to us, it activates a survival response in the brain, often leading to avoidance, vigilance, and emotional detachment. These aren't flaws in Sigma behavior, they're adaptations. The Sigma male, already selective about who he lets in, becomes even more discerning. He doesn't live in bitterness, but in clarity. There is no return to what was, no illusion of going back to a time when innocence masked the truth, no second chance at first trust, and so No forgiveness, not in the traditional sense. That might sound harsh in a world addicted to positivity and second chances. But for the Sigma, forgiveness is not a performance for social approval. It's a decision tied to alignment and integrity. Forgiving someone who violated his inner code feels like betraying himself. So instead he honors the lesson, he remembers. Not to seek revenge, but to guard his peace. He doesn't carry hate, only awareness. In a society where people wear fake apologies like band-aids over self-interest, the Sigma male stands apart. He doesn't demand justice, but he never forgets the breach. And that cold, unwavering memory is what sets him free. Because in a world that moves on too fast, he moves deliberately, with eyes wide open and scars that tell stories no words ever could. Number 6, because forgiveness gives leverage. Apology is often seen as a noble gesture, a sign of remorse, a request to mend the damage. But to the Sigma male, it's more than that. It's a calculated chess move, a strategic maneuver meant to influence, reposition, or disarm. And forgiveness? That's the trap. That's the moment when the gates open, when boundaries blur, and when the one who once caused harm is given a second chance to do it again. The Sigma understands this psychological exchange with razor-sharp clarity. He knows that forgiving someone doesn't just mean letting go. In many cases, it means offering peace, emotional comfort, or even restored access to one's inner world. These are powerful currencies that Sigma males don't hand out lightly, especially not to those who betrayed or disrespected them. Unlike the Alpha, who might confront or dominate, or the Beta, who might submit or reconcile, the Sigma moves in silence and shadows. He sees beyond words and watches behavior. He's not swayed by tears, apologies, or elaborate justifications. Once trust is broken, the Sigma doesn't just patch things up for the sake of peace. He knows the cost of rebuilding is too high, and often the foundation has already crumbled. Psychology backs this mindset. Studies in emotional intelligence and boundary setting show that those who guard their inner peace and protect their emotional energy tend to experience greater long-term mental health. Sigma males embody this principle naturally. They've learned, often through painful lessons, that forgiveness extended too freely becomes a revolving door for manipulation. So when someone wrongs the Sigma and comes crawling back with an apology, it's not a cue for him to open his arms. It's a signal to assess, to evaluate intent, and most times to walk away. Forgiveness for the Sigma is not a gift, it's a guarded gate. He may move on, grow, and even release the resentment internally, but access, trust, connection, those stay locked. He keeps his enemies exactly where they belong, outside the circle, out of reach and out of relevance. Not out of hatred, but out of clarity. Because some bridges are better left burned, not for revenge, but for protection. Number 7, because revenge isn't necessary, distance is. Unlike the Alpha, who often meets conflict with dominance or direct confrontation, the Sigma male operates on an entirely different frequency, one of calculated detachment and quiet power. He doesn't seek retaliation. There are no emotional outbursts, no schemes to get back at someone. He doesn't waste time plotting returns or indulging in ego battles. His revenge, if you can even call it that, is his complete absence. A Sigma doesn't react, he retracts. When betrayed, insulted, or disrespected, he doesn't engage in a war of words or try to prove a point. He simply pulls away, he disappears, and in doing so, he thrives. His silence is not passive, it is purposeful. Studies in psychology suggest that emotional detachment, when practiced with intention, can be a sign of high emotional intelligence and self-regulation. Sigma males master this skill. Rather than being drawn into the emotional chaos of others, they observe, assess, and then remove themselves from environments that don't serve their growth or peace. This kind of exit isn't fueled by bitterness, it's rooted in self-respect. And ironically, nothing unsettles an enemy or rival more than a man who no longer acknowledges their existence. It denies them the power they seek. Sociologically speaking, humans are wired to seek validation, even in conflict. When someone doesn't respond to provocation, it creates psychological discomfort in the aggressor. The Sigma male understands this. His silence speaks volumes. His absence echoes louder than words ever could. He becomes a ghost, not just in the physical sense, but emotionally and mentally. While others are stuck replaying arguments or rehearsing comebacks, the Sigma has already moved on, building his life, elevating his mind, and investing in pursuits that matter. This isn't escapism, it's evolution. His focus shifts from retribution to transformation, and that's what makes the Sigma male not just different, but dangerously unforgettable. In a world addicted to attention and drama, the one who walks away without looking back is the one who leaves the deepest mark. Number 8, because he doesn't need redemption arcs. People love comeback stories. There's something undeniably compelling about the villain who changes his ways, the traitor who finds redemption, or the friend who finally realizes the depth of their betrayal and begs forgiveness. It feeds into our desire for closure, for happy endings, for transformation. But the Sigma male doesn't buy into that emotional fantasy. He lives in the raw and often harsh truth of reality. While others may cling to the hope that people change or that time heals all wounds, the Sigma understands that character is rarely altered by regret alone. Forgiveness to him is not automatic. It's earned through consistent action, not words. Psychology studies back this mindset, showing that while people change, long-term behavioral shifts are rare without serious introspection and effort. The Sigma doesn't stake his peace of mind on that slim chance. If someone lies, betrays, or disrespects him, he takes that as data, not drama. He doesn't sit around waiting for a redemption arc that may never come. If you burn the bridge, he doesn't camp beside the ashes hoping you'll return with bricks and apologies. He moves forward, finds a better route, and builds something stronger elsewhere. Often alone, but never weaker. This isn't bitterness, it's clarity. The Sigma male operates on a philosophy of self-reliance, not self-sacrifice. He understands that nostalgia can be a trap, and misplaced hope can be more damaging than the initial betrayal. His silence isn't cold-hearted, it's calculated. He knows that energy spent revisiting old wounds is energy stolen from new growth, and in a world where loyalty is often performative and apologies are sometimes manipulative, the Sigma values actions over sentiment. He doesn't need grand gestures or emotional speeches, he needs proof, and until then he walks on, quietly, powerfully, and with zero interest in revisiting the ruins you left behind. That's not cruelty, that's wisdom earned from pain. While others romanticize reconciliation, the Sigma male chooses liberation. His comeback story isn't about fixing the past, it's about mastering the present, forging ahead without the chains of betrayal dragging him down. And in doing so, he becomes the hero of his own narrative, not because he saved the villain, but because he saved himself. The Sigma male isn't driven by bitterness or revenge. He's powered by strategy and emotional discipline. While others may preach forgiveness for inner peace, the Sigma finds peace through control, by choosing silence over confrontation and detachment over drama. He doesn't harbor hatred. Instead, he remembers what hurt him and learns from it. He knows some betrayals aren't just emotional scars, they're lessons, warnings. Forgiveness to him is not weakness, but sometimes letting go without re-entry is the wiser move. His refusal to forgive isn't cruelty, it's clarity. Some bridges, once burned, are meant to stay ashes. Stay curious, be unseen, be unfazed, be unforgettable. He doesn't storm into rooms, he slips in, quiet, calculated, unbothered. No handshakes, no small talk, no masks. And for that, people hate him. But not for the reasons you might think. The Sigma male isn't loud, flashy, or eager to be noticed. In fact, he's the opposite. He is the embodiment of silence in a world addicted to noise. This man doesn't chase validation, and he certainly doesn't ask for permission. He walks through life like a ghost in broad daylight, seen but not truly known, and it drives people mad. Why? Because the Sigma male breaks the unspoken social contract, the one that says you must constantly prove yourself to others. He doesn't play by society's rules, not out of rebellion, but out of sheer disinterest. While others broadcast their lives online, counting likes and followers as proof of worth, the Sigma remains a mystery, a man unplugged from the algorithm. Psychologists have noted that humans are hardwired to respond to social cues. And when someone doesn't mirror back the expected behaviors, smiling on command, making small talk, showing deference, it triggers discomfort and even hostility. That's why the Sigma's quiet defiance isn't just misunderstood, it's feared. His habits, solitude, independence, emotional control, shine a light on everyone else's dependency, insecurity, and performative personas. And when someone doesn't beg to be liked, it threatens those who live for approval. That's why the Sigma male isn't just disliked, he's resented. His presence is a walking contradiction to everything people have been conditioned to admire. And it exposes something deeper, that maybe we've been taught to chase the wrong things. This video isn't about surface-level charm or charisma, it's about the truth, the raw, inconvenient truth. The very habits that make Sigma males so powerful are the same ones that make others uncomfortable. Not because they're wrong, but because they force people to confront their own weaknesses. So sit still, we're going deep. Habit 1, when presence feels like rejection. The modern world is designed to hijack your attention. Every app is meticulously crafted to trigger dopamine hits, making you crave likes, swipes, and endless scrolling. Brands spend billions to make you feel incomplete without their product. Social media influencers transform personal moments into performances, choreographing authenticity for views. In the middle of this digital circus where noise is currency and visibility is power, the Sigma male steps back. He doesn't dance for algorithms or plead for relevance. He's not interested in broadcasting his breakfast or arguing in comment sections. Instead, he observes silently, strategically. He disappears from group chats, not out of rudeness, but out of rebellion, rejecting the unspoken demand to be constantly available. He skips the party not because he's shy, but because he values substance over spectacle. And when he does walk away, it's without a dramatic exit or lingering goodbyes. That silence, it's deafening to those who need constant reassurance. His absence becomes a mirror, reflecting others' insecurities. People don't hate the Sigma because he's distant. They hate that he's immune to the system they've surrendered to. In a world addicted to validation, his indifference is revolutionary. Society tries to frame him as antisocial, broken, or cold because labeling him makes him easier to dismiss. But the truth is, he's not playing their game, he's playing his own. Research in psychology has shown that people who are less dependent on external validation tend to be more emotionally resilient and self-aware. The Sigma embodies this, functioning with an internal compass rather than a crowdsourced map. His detachment isn't apathy, it's a conscious boundary. He's not hostile, he's just free. And that freedom in a world built on conformity is terrifying, because the moment you stop needing the crowd is the moment you realize how much control they had. The Sigma male has already realized this. He's not here to be liked, he's here to be real, and that alone makes him dangerous in a society addicted to performance. Habit 2, indifference is his armor. People often misunderstand the Sigma male because he doesn't operate like the rest. His calm demeanor is mistaken for coldness, his silence for arrogance, and his emotional detachment for disrespect, but nothing could be further from the truth. Internally, the Sigma is not wrestling with the need to be liked or validated. There is no internal chaos demanding external comfort. He's not chasing the highs of applause or running from the lows of criticism. What lies beneath his still surface is a rare form of self-mastery, emotional sovereignty. Studies in psychology confirm that individuals with high emotional intelligence are less reactive and more resilient under pressure. And the Sigma embodies this to the extreme. He moves through conflict with surgical precision, addressing problems not with raised voices or flared tempers, but with calm decisions and calculated boundaries. He doesn't lash out because he doesn't need to. That kind of control, especially in high-stakes or emotionally charged situations, can be unnerving to those who are ruled by impulse and emotion. People who haven't developed that level of inner discipline often find his composure threatening, so they call it cold. They call it robotic. They call it disgusting. But what they really mean is intimidating, because in a society where emotional reaction is currency, where drama, outrage, and vulnerability are traded like likes and retweets, his refusal to play along is seen as rebellion. He doesn't crumble when ignored, he doesn't beg for attention, and he certainly doesn't compromise his peace to soothe someone else's chaos. He isn't heartless, he simply isn't governed by emotional storms. That's a level of independence most don't understand, and yet paradoxically, it's what draws people in. There's strength in his silence, power in his restraint. In a culture saturated with oversharing and overreacting, the Sigma stands apart. He's proof that you don't have to be loud to be powerful, and you don't have to be seen to be in control. His detachment isn't rejection, it's refinement. It's the result of years spent mastering the inner world while others were distracted by the outer one. In a world addicted to emotional reactions, the Sigma's calm is not a flaw, it's a threat. And deep down they know it. Habit 3, he exposes the performers. In social settings, Sigma males do something deceptively simple, yet undeniably dangerous. They listen, they watch, they calculate. While others compete for attention, status, or validation, the Sigma remains silent, observant, and disengaged from the social rat race. This isn't passivity, it's power in its quietest form. The Sigma male doesn't need to assert dominance because he dismantles the very framework that demands it. When the loudest man in the room boasts about his achievements, the Sigma offers no applause or rivalry, only a calm, unreadable gaze. When a manipulator spins their web of control, the Sigma doesn't argue or react. He simply removes himself from the trap, exposing the manipulator's game without a word. His silence becomes unsettling because it doesn't offer the emotional feedback people crave. Psychologically, humans are wired to seek acknowledgement, to test their power against others. The Sigma denies them that satisfaction, and in doing so, he becomes a mirror, one that reflects not admiration but insecurity. This is why many find the Sigma male unnerving. He operates outside the traditional social hierarchy, where alpha males dominate and betas submit. In fact, psychologist Robert Hogan's socioanalytic theory explains that most people are driven by a need to get along and get ahead. The Sigma violates both. He doesn't strive to belong and he doesn't chase status. Yet paradoxically, his independence becomes magnetic. People can't ignore him, and that breeds resentment. His refusal to play by society's rules feels like rebellion, especially in a world obsessed with visibility and performance. His power lies in detachment. While others are busy strategizing their next move in the social chess game, the Sigma is already 3 moves ahead, or not even playing the game at all. This psychological distance allows him to observe motives, read intentions, and dismantle manipulative structures with surgical precision. He doesn't need to dominate the room to own it. His quiet presence challenges the very foundation of social power, and that in itself is threatening. People hate him not because he tries to win, but because he doesn't try at all, and still leaves a lasting impact. In a society addicted to noise, the Sigma's silence is revolutionary and dangerous. Habit 4, mastery offends the mediocre. Most people today are addicted to distraction, and not by accident. In a world engineered for instant gratification, the average person scrolls, swipes, and refreshes their way through life, chasing fleeting hits of dopamine from social media, gossip, and superficial entertainment. It's a mental diet of junk food. And just like poor nutrition ruins the body, poor mental input sabotages growth. But the Sigma male is wired differently. He doesn't chase dopamine, he chases discipline. While others binge-watch shows or endlessly check their notifications, the Sigma is building. He's learning a new skill, refining his craft, investing in silence, and making invisible gains that compound over time. He doesn't seek validation from others. He's too focused on validating his own potential. This quiet dedication makes him both admirable and threatening. Not because he brags about his progress, he doesn't. In fact, his success is often invisible until it becomes undeniable. He simply becomes unreachable, not because he looks down on others, but because he's operating on a frequency few are willing to tune into, mentally, financially, and spiritually. And as his life begins to transform, people take notice, but not in celebration. Instead, they whisper, "He's just lucky. He's weird. He's full of himself." But deep down, their criticisms are a defense mechanism, a way to excuse their own complacency. The Sigma's very existence is a quiet indictment of their wasted potential. He represents what they could have become had they chosen focus over distraction, discipline over indulgence, purpose over popularity. His life becomes a mirror they can't escape, reflecting the reality they've avoided. That's why they hate him, not for what he says, but for what he silently reminds them. They're choosing stagnation while he chooses growth. And in a society that rewards noise and punishes solitude, the Sigma male's refusal to conform is both rebellious and powerful. He's not addicted to distractions. He's addicted to becoming the man he was always meant to be. Habit 5, disappearing without explanation. The Sigma male doesn't make a scene when he leaves. He doesn't slam doors or send dramatic texts. He simply vanishes without warning or explanation. To many, this behavior feels cold or dismissive, but in truth, it has nothing to do with cruelty. It's self-preservation. The The Sigma is wired differently. He doesn't thrive on social validation or external reassurance. Instead, he operates from a deeply internal compass, and when he senses imbalance, manipulation, or emotional noise, his instinct is to retreat, not to hurt, not to punish, but to recharge, reassess, and protect his peace. His silence is not a declaration of war. It's an act of quiet rebellion against the chaotic pull of modern interpersonal expectations. Yet for those left behind, his exit feels like abandonment. Why? Because in a world obsessed with attention, validation, and being seen, the Sigma's withdrawal acts like a mirror. It reflects just how dependent many have become on external affirmation. Ghosting, a term often associated with immaturity or disrespect, takes on a different meaning when viewed through the Sigma lens. It's not a tactic, it's a philosophy. While others demand closure and explanations, the Sigma sees no need to explain what he didn't disrupt. His departure is not an attack, it's an alignment with authenticity. And this calm detachment, this complete indifference to dramatic farewells, hits harder than any argument. In fact, studies in psychology suggest that emotional ambiguity, such as a sudden, unexplained withdrawal, can be more psychologically distressing than overt conflict. It leaves the other person spiraling in self-doubt, not because of the Sigma's cruelty, but because of their own unhealed need for validation. The Sigma doesn't seek to sting, but the silence speaks louder than confrontation ever could. And that's what truly unsettles people, not the distance itself, but the realization that they were never as necessary to him as they thought. His world doesn't crumble without them. He doesn't beg for understanding. He just moves quietly, powerfully, and on his own terms. That is the essence of Sigma detachment. Not bitter, but deliberate. Not emotional manipulation, but energetic recalibration. And in a society addicted to noise, his silence is louder than thunder. Habit 6, speaking only when necessary. The Sigma male is allergic to small talk, not in the literal medical sense, of course, but in the way a minimalist reacts to clutter. It irritates him, bores him, and drains him. Unlike others who feel the need to fill silence with idle chatter just to avoid the discomfort of stillness, the Sigma male treats silence like a canvas, not a void. He doesn't speak to validate himself, to prove his worth, or to curry favor. He speaks when he has something to say, deliberate, calculated, and purposeful. This is not a matter of arrogance, but of authenticity. His communication is rooted in substance over style and depth over decoration. But to the average observer, his reserved demeanor can feel cold, standoffish, or even robotic. That's because we live in a culture that often equates verbal fluency with friendliness and silence with judgment. The Sigma male breaks that code entirely. Research in psychology confirms that people with introverted or highly independent temperaments like the Sigma archetype tend to find small talk not just tedious but cognitively taxing. It's not that they can't engage, they simply choose not to waste energy on conversations that don't move the needle. And that choice unsettles people. In a world dominated by noise where everyone's broadcasting their thoughts and opinions 24/7, silence is often mistaken for disdain. But for the Sigma male, silence is strength. It's discipline. It's a filter that guards his energy, allowing him to invest his attention into ideas, pursuits, and people that actually matter. While others scatter their words like confetti, hoping something sticks, he treats his words like arrows, few, precise, and aimed with intent. In this sense, his quiet presence becomes a kind of rebellion against the performative noise of modern life. And paradoxically, that silence speaks louder than any sales pitch or social performance ever could. It's not that he's trying to insult anyone, he just refuses to speak unless his words carry weight. Habit 7, pursuing purpose, not popularity. He doesn't network, he aligns. In a world obsessed with constant self-promotion, handshakes, and status-driven circles, the Sigma male operates on a different frequency. He doesn't chase connections for clout. He seeks alignment of purpose, values, and vision. This is not arrogance, it's intentional living. While most people attend events, collect business cards, and trade authenticity for acceptance, the Sigma male works in silence to make himself undeniable. He doesn't shout his potential, he proves it. And this right here is what unsettles others. Society often rewards performative behavior over substance, but the Sigma's strength lies in doing the exact opposite. He isn't interested in playing the popularity game. His self-worth isn't dependent on being liked, validated, or praised. According to psychological studies, individuals with strong internal motivation, like Sigma personalities, are more likely to experience long-term fulfillment and resilience. This makes the Sigma male dangerous in the eyes of a conformist world because he doesn't need the approval of others to act. His goals are not sculpted by Instagram trends, peer pressure, or applause. He has a clear inner compass that guides his mission, often forged in solitude, hardship, and fierce independence. While others gravitate toward the crowd for safety and identity, he moves toward clarity, of thought, of purpose, of soul. Crowds can be noisy and chaotic. Clarity, on the other hand, is rare and earned. He builds while others scroll. He reflects while others react. This is not just a different habit, it's a different blueprint for life. And people don't just fail to understand it, they fear it. Why? Because it exposes their own dependency on external validation. It forces them to confront the uncomfortable truth that the loudest in the room is rarely the strongest. The Sigma male isn't antisocial, he's selectively social. He doesn't crave attention, he commands respect. And perhaps the scariest part, he does it all without asking for permission. In a world addicted to being seen, the Sigma male has mastered the art of becoming unforgettable without ever needing to be loud. Habit 8, rejecting manipulation instantly. The Sigma spots manipulation like smoke in a room, swift, subtle, and suffocating if unnoticed. Whether it's guilt-tripping disguised as concern, gaslighting masked by confusion, or flattery laced with ulterior motives, the Sigma male doesn't fall for it, not because he's cold-hearted, but because he's emotionally intelligent and mentally unshakable. You see, the Sigma operates from a place of inner clarity. He's studied human behavior intentionally or intuitively, and understands that manipulation thrives on emotional reaction. The manipulator's toolbox relies on getting a rise out of their target: confusion, defensiveness, anger, and neediness. But the Sigma offers none of these. He doesn't bite the bait, he doesn't argue to set the record straight, nor does he beg to be understood. Instead, he simply disengages. His silence is not a lack of awareness, it's a calculated move. Psychology tells us that manipulation loses its power when it is not rewarded with attention or emotion. The Sigma lives by this law. He stays calm, observes patterns, and when the signs become clear, he detaches. Manipulators hate him for this, because their power dissolves in the face of emotional neutrality. While most people are pulled into the manipulator's game, trying to explain themselves, defending their worth, or trying to fix the situation, the Sigma does the opposite. He exits, quietly, cleanly, effectively. This behavior is rooted in what some psychologists refer to as gray rocking, a technique where one becomes so emotionally unresponsive that the manipulator loses interest. But for the Sigma, this isn't a trick, it's a lifestyle. His minimal attachment to social validation gives him the freedom to walk away from toxic dynamics without second-guessing himself. He doesn't seek closure. He doesn't need to win. His win is peace. And so, while manipulators create storms, the Sigma walks in with a barometer and a parachute. He doesn't just survive manipulation, he makes it obsolete. The game ends before it even begins because he refuses to play. In a world that rewards reaction, his stillness is rebellion. In an arena where manipulators feed on emotional drama, the Sigma offers only one thing: ice-cold awareness. He's not angry. He's not bitter. He's just gone. And by the time the manipulator realizes they have no strings to pull, the Sigma is already halfway across the mental map, exploring higher ground where peace and purpose, not power plays, are the currencies of value. The Sigma male doesn't set out to be disliked. He simply lives as his most authentic self. He doesn't conform, doesn't flatter, and certainly doesn't beg for validation. In a world addicted to likes, masks, and shallow approval, his quiet defiance becomes an unspoken rebellion. Psychologically, this self-possession can trigger insecurity in others because it reflects a freedom they secretly crave but fear to pursue. People don't hate him for doing wrong, they resent him for doing what they're too afraid to do, live unfiltered. So while others judge or gossip, the Sigma watches, adapts, and evolves, alone, unnoticed, and unforgettable.